Gentlemen, and ladies as well too. If you're in the chat, start your engines as the engines have been started for the 5 versus 5 Frank Warren versus Eddie Hearn. It's great to see you on not a Monday, on a Wednesday, I believe. I had to check my calendar because my week is all up in tilt because we're not on a Monday. But it is. We're here Wednesday, still giving you the Seconds Out live content that you need every week here with myself, Ayman Khan, and not Danny Flexon's son. He is his own man, Josh Green. Josh, how you doing?
Very, very well. Busy couple of days down in London for the 5v5 press conference and the media day yesterday. So you've had to wait an extra 48 hours to get your SO live content. But we're here now, another hour of content coming up. And plenty to cover, Ayman.
Plenty to cover, Josh. We will get to you and I being at the press conference and then you being at the media day in a moment. First of all, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, as we've got much more boxing content coming your way. Subscribe as well if you like hearing the Seconds Out Live podcast. You can also listen to it on Spotify too. Josh, have you got Spotify?
I have, mate. Yeah, obviously. Who doesn't have Spotify these days?
Who doesn't have Spotify these days? Who isn't subscribed to the Seconds Out Live podcast on Spotify too these days either? Make sure you listen and drop in the 5 stars. Anything less is a felony, as someone once said, I think, in a famous rap song. Right then, getting into that 5v5 talk. Waited quite a while, actually, for this. If you remember a couple of years back, during the coronavirus period, Frank Warren had pitched to Eddie Hearn a certain 5v5 card, or at least a Queensberry versus Matchroom card. And it was one of those hot topics back in the day. It might have been the seminal moment for people over in Saudi to look at and think, that's actually a good idea. If we can get these two together, bang their heads, as it seems to have been done now, and find the money for the fighters as well too, which is probably one of the major sticking points, which really stopped it from getting over the line. This could be a good concept, and it seems to be a good concept indeed, and they seem to have found some really good fights too. Josh, I'll start with you from the 5v5. Are you satisfied with the fights that we've got on the table?
Absolutely satisfied. Yeah, I think there's a real good mix in there. A couple of huge names. Deontay Wilder, obviously the biggest of the 10 names that we saw revealed on Monday afternoon, Monday evening. But yeah, a nice little mix, to be honest. Even Willie Hutchinson, Craig Richards, really intriguing fight. Nick Ball back out in a second world title opportunity after he was robbed against Ray Vargas as well. I think, yeah, you couldn't just have sort of 10 world title fights or 10 world level fights. I think it's important to get a bit more of a mix, so you've got those sort of fringe world, maybe European level when it comes to something like Richards, Willie Hutchinson, and you've got it could be for a world title in Daniel Dubois against Filip Hrgovic. I'm sure we'll talk about that soon, but yeah, a really nice mix of weights, as we saw they were picked a number of weeks ago. Nice mix of fighters. Unfortunately, the only thing for me, the only slight disappointment, the slight stain on the press conferences where there were no surprises. We knew exactly what was coming, or at least most people did, and it would have been great if there was just one curveball in there, but we certainly can't complain at the card that was revealed.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's certainly been built, and the promoters have to do their job as to say that this is a fantastic card, and you know, these are some great fights. And I think very much so. I side on to say that this is probably the best card that I can think of during my tenure as a boxing fan or as a boxing I don't know, journalist or reporter, as I might be called. I can't think of a better card from top to bottom that really kind of equates to this level of quality. One that sticks to mind, I remember when Eddie Hearn started off DAZN, he was saying that, you know, we're going to be game change. Monica came, we're going to be bringing you fights and quality of fights and fighters consistently across. And to be fair to Eddie, he's delivered some good fights, but it hasn't been that consistency or quality that maybe we were promised from the outset of DAZN. But one of the cards that I remember that sticks into my mind is Liam Smith versus Anthony Fowler being a very good card. You had the likes of Troy Williamson and Ted Cheeseman on there, other fights on there as well that were really kind of ones where you actually wanted to stick in and be glued from the first bell all the way up until the end of the bell. And when you've got Craig Richards versus Willie Hutchinson as being your quote-unquote worst fight, or maybe even opening fight, you know you're in for a really good card from top to bottom. So just running through everything here, if you haven't checked out what the 5v5 is. And let's not forget as well, too, that it's been headlined by Beterbiev versus Bivol as well for the undisputed light heavyweight titles. Crazy amount of quality on that card. So just jumping through all the fights, Willie Hutchinson and Craig Richards, Deontay Wilder versus Zhang, Shiraz versus Williams, Austin Williams, not Liam Williams, in a rematch, Ray Ford versus Nick Ball, Daniel Dubois against Filip Hrgovic, and then again, like I mentioned there, Artur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol. There is a small rumor, there is a small whisper that something else might be added to that card. Don't have any further information on that as to whether that's true, but just a small rumor that is going around now that something else might be added. Don't know what that is. The other side of this, though, as well, Josh, is, and as we've seen with Frank Smith, who is looking to put forward a tournament in Japan, is these 5v5 fights are great, but someone might pick up an injury. Someone might pick up a niggle. Someone might, I don't know. You look at Zach Parker, who was in against Tyrone Zoga last. It was supposed to be him, as was rumored, to be taken on Craig Richards, and he underperformed, and he got pulled out. Someone might get pulled out and replaced for someone else if things, don't fall the way they fall. So, whilst the card is set as it is right now, things might change until we get to that date. But I just wanted to pick up on a couple of fights there before we get to the marquee one. I just wanted to ask you about Daniel Dubois. We saw Daniel really kind of answer a lot of questions in his fight against Jarrell Miller. The fight went two ways. Daniel was looking at one point that maybe he would get swallowed by the myriad of punches that Jarrell Miller was putting out there, but he really kind of rose to the occasion and was able to get the victory over Jarrell Miller. Do you feel that this is the right time to almost pull that trigger against Filip Hrgovic, who, by all intents and purposes, Filip Hrgovic was ready to be in line for the mandatory fight for one of the titles, so he was there looking upwards. So he's in a holding point, maybe thinking Dubois is easy for him to pick off. But do you feel this is the right time for Dubois, while his confidence is high, to take on Hrgovic and maybe beat him?
I'm not sure whether the time is completely right for Dubois to get a win in the column and possibly take that IBF title if it is indeed on the line. I know some of the odds were released, I think it was late last night or yesterday afternoon, and Dubois has been installed as a 3-1 outsider in this fight, which I think personally is pretty good value, especially if you're looking to go down the knockout route for Daniel Dubois. But in terms of the time being right for him, I'm not sure how much he will have learned since that defeat against Alexander Usyk. It was a brave performance against the world champion Usyk at the time. He's obviously only had that one fight with Jarrell Miller since then. Spoke to Don Charles, and he says that the work that Daniel's putting in the gym at the moment, he believes in the next 6 to 12 months, Daniel will become unbeatable. That's not something that I can necessarily see happening with the current crop of heavyweights that are around at the moment. But I think we forget how young Daniel still is. He's in his mid-20s. He's possibly got another decade at the top of the sport. There's absolutely no need to rush him. And he will go into this fight against Hrgovic as a relatively significant underdog. And I'm not sure how much a loss would harm his resume at this point. He's obviously taken a couple of defeats already against Usyk and Joyce. But a win is probably a risk worth taking at the moment. What's the difference between 2 defeats and 3 defeats? We've seen him rebuild before. He can rebuild again. He's only in his mid-20s, so probably a risk worth taking. So I guess in that point of view, the time probably is right to have another crack for a world title, if it is to be.
Yeah, I think for me, I can sort of understand why they've taken the opportunity against Filip Hrgovic, because Daniel's confidence is probably at its highest peak since before Joyce, since before Usyk as well too. So I think they probably wanted to look into capitalize on that, and that if Daniel's going to do it, it's going to be now, as opposed to wanting to build back in a few fights. And whilst the money's there, they look to maybe take it. I'm really impressed by Daniel's attitude as well. When he spoke to Danny yesterday, I think it was, he was just saying, look, I don't want any holding fights. I want fights that mean something for me. I want to look upwards. I want to target the big fights, the bigger money that comes with it too. Like, those are the nights I want. Nothing less is satisfactory for me. So I'm quite impressed by that attitude, because when it's been in recent years, some heavyweights have been happy to kind of take those couple of fights to build back up and get back to some form before they go in and go for those bigger paydays. So his attitude is something that really kind of shines for me. There were a couple of interesting picks. Before we get to the biggest interesting pick being Deontay Wilder, it's the picks for the captains. Captain, first of all, for Queensbury is Hamza Shiraz against Austin Williams. Probably one of the more closer fights, actually, on the cards. And then also for Matchroom, Eddie Hearn has only gone and chosen Deontay Wilder as the captain. We'll leave the Wilder talk for a moment, because we're going to get into that for a second. But maybe for some, you might think that Craig Richards has been one of the most long-standing, I'll say that correctly, Matchroom fighters, have been on Matchroom cards for years, might have got that pick as well too. And considering he's in against Willie Hutchinson, although an accomplished boxer, not fought at the level of Craig Richards, who fought for world titles before, you might think that Craig might have got that pick. But do you think Hamza Shiraz is a good pick here for Frank, and maybe they missed the boat with picking Craig Richards from Matchroom?
I think Shiraz is probably the correct call from Frank's point of view. Spoke to him yesterday about this, and he says he really has the broad shoulders to carry the captaincy, but also very much a tactical decision. I would tend to think that of all the fighters and all the fights on the card, the one that has the most chance of victory or the widest margin would probably be Hamza Shiraz, in my point. Okay. The other option there could possibly even be Zhang. If you're looking from the point of view of Eddie Hearn, he's looking to get, instead of 2 points for a knockout, double points to 4 for the knockout. That's why he's gone with Wilder as captain. Then maybe Zhang would have been the choice to get that double, get 4 points. But yeah, in terms of Craig Richards, who you were talking about possibly being picked as a Matchroom captain, I think he, from the Matchroom side at least, is the biggest favourite. Willie Hutchinson has fought at a reasonable level, but you wouldn't say he's fought at top world level, whereas Craig Richards has had a couple of real standout performances there. He's been up against Joshua Buatsi. He's obviously come close to a world title. I mean, yeah, the experience as well is something that could come into play. Willie Hutchinson's not been on a top card in quite some time now. He's been fighting on the Warren York Hall cards, and that could come into play here. It's a lot of pressure on Willie Hutchinson's shoulders to get that done against Craig Richards, and I'd fully expect Richards to win. But yeah, Wilder the captain for her, and certainly an interesting pick.
Let's get to some of the interesting comments in the chat. If you haven't already, leave a comment. We'll read them out on the show. We'll be dissecting some of your comments too, responding to them, and also we pick up some of the comments off from the previous week into next week. So make sure, if we don't read them out, we'll probably pick them up on here, or leave them in the comments in the actual comment section once it's ended, and we'll read them over. We certainly do check them out as well too. So getting into them, Big Chungus gives you a hello from me, a hello from Josh, and a hello from Big Chungus with a Mr. Bean display picture. I thought Big Chungus might be. I thought the meme was Bugs Bunny, not Mr. Bean. But nonetheless, hello to you too, Big Chungers, and everyone else in the chat. DB Cooper 1, good to see DB Cooper 1 keeping consistent. How can we be sure he's not Danny Flexen's son, who he didn't just exile to the barren lands of Peterborough? Peterborough Barren, Josh?
Yeah, I'd say Barren is probably an accurate description of Peterborough, to be honest. I'm not sure that compares with Snodland and Kent, where Mr. Flexen resides.
Snodland,
I believe that's where he's from. He might be. No, he's Rochester now, isn't he? So yeah.
I've never heard of Snotland before. But you said Snodland, right?
I did indeed.
There you go. Fair. I think Joel Exton might be from Snodland or Snotland. Anyway, moving on. DB Cooper 1 says Ayman's shirt is only the second weirdest fit I've seen after Amma Williams on his fur tail. What was that about? I missed the fur tail. I know that Ammo Williams has a bit of an eccentric style. I think Ammo might also be one of the fighters with a hidden talent. If I remember correctly, during, again, the coronavirus period gets a second mention on the podcast today. I think he was painting like pictures and of gaming characters. I'm pretty sure he was painting pictures of like Kirby, if you know Kirby from the Nintendo series. So I think Ammo's got interest outside of just boxing in the form of gaming and that sort of artistic style. Maybe it's like bringing that over, much like Devin Haney was bringing over his skeleton gilet thing. We'll get to Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia later on. I think as a Brit, this is one of the greatest cards in a long time. And for the international boxing fan, Beterbiev versus Bivol is insane value. Joey Abel says Hrgovic has proven to have a chin. I think he punches more fluid than Joyce and is slightly better mover. It depends. Like when I've had conversation with other people in the industry, some really have wild, like differing takes on Hrgovic. Some will say that he's been maneuvered well into this position, and really he's a B plus, maybe B minus type of heavyweight who's just had the rub of the green, and he certainly did have the rub of the green against Zhang on the undercard of Usyk Joshua 2. One of the nights where Zhang probably would have felt really aggrieved not to pick up the victory. And for other people, people think that he is a good fighter and just hasn't had the chance to prove that just yet. He might cement that with, or at least he might cement the levels against Daniel Dubois, who's trying to make his way up to that level. Belts are about to scatter. Dubois is still young, so perfect time to potentially take a loss at world title level. I get that point, Joey. Well made. DB Cooper 1 again. Dubois has been in much better fights in recent times than Hrgovic, who was mandatory, hasn't done anything since Zhang, which was sus in itself, as I just mentioned there. Hrgovic has avoided top competition for most of his career, which could come to bite him again. This is the people saying that he's been maneuvered well. Is Yard mad? He's not in on the Saudi money yet. I think a lot of that has to do with what's up in the air regarding his promotional situation. Not sure what the situation is. It seems that from one side of the team, I'm speaking for them right now, but this is just what's in the public, so this is what we can only garner. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but one side clearly thinks that the promotional contract is at an end, the other doesn't. So whilst that, and Frank has said in recent interviews that he's looking to maintain his stance, so that might take quite a bit of time if that's the case to deliberate on. Ayman has got very broad shoulders. Is this Vinny in the background making these comments? Not sure it is. Who knows? Trying to get to the gym, trying to slim down. So if that's a side effect, then so be it. What have we got else here? Poor lad Ayman is trying to get hench. What was that, a protein shake? It is. Have worked out. You've caught me red-handed on the protein shake. Reflex Nutrition don't sponsor us, but they are sponsoring my diet right now. Nice beard as well. It's okay. I'm pretty crap at trimming and maintaining beards and stuff. So at the moment, it's doing well. What do you mean trying? I'm trying. We're all trying, Big Chungus. We're all trying. DB Cooper 1. Back to the boxing chat. Yard just does whatever Uncle Tunde says. Probably got my fight lined up in. We'll see. Hopefully, look, Yard is one of my favorite fighters. If I'm very honest with you, I think he's really the full package. He's got boxing talent. He's competed at the highest level. Sure, he's come up twice, but gives all his heart. He's a good talker. He's an ambassador for his area. And when you see him on screen, I remember seeing him on the Sky Sports interview, and he called up Watts, and I thought, you're a proper star. Like, you could really transition of the fighters that we could tell are superstars. He's one of them that can really transition over to the mainstream audience and be on these, BBC morning breakfast channels and talking about boxing and talking about, what he's been through to get to, his next fight and stuff. I really think of Yard in that high regard. So for me, it's quite a bit of a shame to see him in what will be a stall of his career right now, especially like people are saying in the chat right now, where there are riches to be had over in Saudi Arabia. There's still the riches or the accolades to grab of the world title too. So I don't want to see Yard's career stall off of the back of this when those two paths, either one which he wants to go through, hopefully both can combine for him to get that opportunity. He can seek both of those for his career, but it might be that he has to sit on the bench for a while whilst he's sorting things off in the background. Lastly, before we get on to our next topic, Shiraz versus Williams is the fight for me. Proper scrap, but I think Frank puts too much pressure by making Hamza captain. I did say this to Hamza Shiraz, like, you've got a good fight here, 50-50, but then you've also got the pressure of actually carrying the Queensberry flag here into the ring. Do you want that? And Hamza's really laid back, and I think he's been and dealt with some big nights and big moments in his career so far, mainly Bradley Ski. I know there's some contention about that fight, but he's come through that and proved himself since. And I think he's just taken, maybe earlier in his career might be like, ooh, a little bit, concerned about it, but it's really taking that in his stride now. I kind of seen Hamza Shiraz kind of grow into a man over recent years, and I think having that pressure of being the Queensberry captain won't actually affect him all that much. Lastly, before we move on, Josh, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think about this whole gimmick? We saw the mask coming off, and I know that we knew pretty much all the fights and the fights that were going to happen, but we didn't know until we know. Did you like that aspect of it, the gimmick of like, revealing these fighters, something that they might do in the Wembley one, which is mooted for September sometime? If they get it right and they keep it all under wraps, do you like the idea of having this uncertainty heading into the fights and these 5v5 reveals? Do you like the idea of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole production for me was absolutely superb with the backdrops, the stage set, and of course the absolutely magnificent promo that was revealed on the night as well. Of course, the revealing of the fighters would have been much better if it was a surprise, or at least if there was some, if you were a little more unsure of who was going to be revealed. But yeah, it's an idea that I imagine was put into place quite a while back when they were planning how this press conference would look, and unfortunately, it didn't progress quite how they wanted it to. It obviously dragged on quite a while before the fighters were unveiled this Monday. But had the press conference maybe been a couple of weeks ago, not long after the weights were revealed, then you never know, maybe it would have been adding a little bit of an extra edge. I certainly think if they can keep things under wrap for that Wembley show, then it will add a real extra bit of spice. So really enjoyed the production side of it, and I just wish it was a bit more of a surprise. But as far as that promo goes, what an incredible piece of work that was. 5 minutes of Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, and the revealing of the fighters. I mean, I've seen the numbers that's done on social media. That's pretty incredible for just a promotional video for a show. So yeah, I'm sure we'll see much more of that in the years to come with these Saudi shows, and fingers crossed one over in Wembley in September, as you mentioned.
Was it supposed to be inspired by Lock, Stock, and whatever that movie is? I've not seen it. Have you seen it, Josh?
Yeah, I think that's the vibe that I got, and I think it was Danny that was speaking to Eddie the other day, and that's what he mentioned. It was generally based on. So yeah, I mean, you've got to give it to them. That's certainly the best promo I've seen, and yeah, quite possibly the best card as well.
Well, moving on to one specific fighter on this card that we want to discuss, and it's quite a surprise that these two are working together, even if it is for the short term, even if it is for the interim. The idea of Deontay Wilder and Eddie Hearn working together and working under the Matchroom banner for Wilder and then being made captain by Eddie Hearn was something that, rewind a few years back, you wouldn't have thought of, given the past in making fights, given the past in discussions, given the past in terms of some of the jibes made by Eddie towards Shirley Finkel, who was once Don Shirley Winkle. It seems like all in the past, the wrinkles had been ironed out for those two or three to work together, and for, as Josh shakes his head, that came off the dome. I thought that was pretty good, to be fair, Josh. He's shaking his head in the background. But nonetheless, the point is, to put it in short, is Wilder and Hearn are working together. It seems like the Saudis, it seems like the heavyweights are understanding that it doesn't matter, past this past, we can bury whatever it was, the hatchet in the background in the past, as long as we're all getting paid and making something out of it. We've got to seize the opportunity and put the egos to a side. You get that sense of wanting to work for the opportunity. You get the sense of maybe that the hatchet's been buried by Wilder and Hearn here, Josh, for those two to work together now on this 5v5.
I think they understand the opportunity more than anything. Wilder needs a big platform, a big win, and a big promotion to get it back into people's mind. Who's someone that can win a world championship, and the only way he's going to do that is by beating somebody of the level of Zhile Zhang, who's been up there in recent months with his 2 wins over Joe Joyce. Obviously, he's had that defeat of late, but I think if Deontay Wilder was to go and beat Zhang, it would put him back in the people's minds, back in right up in the rankings in the governing bodies, and yeah, people could seriously talk about him again as somebody who could fight for a world title. In terms of his relationship with Eddie Hearn, yeah, from what we saw up on stage, all those creases that you mentioned seem to have been ironed out. He seems like a very happy fighter. He seems like a very relaxed fighter. Certainly the Deontay Wilder that we saw in the Tyson Fury trilogy, he seems like a completely different person up there now. I spoke to Malik Scott about this, about the mindset change, and he was very, very positive on the side of Deontay, obviously, as he would be. But he just seems so calm and unfazed by anything. And I think that probably comes into the thinking when working with a new promoter and somebody all those years ago that they've had their back and forth and their battles with. He seems like a different person now, and maybe he's put those things behind him. And look, Eddie wanted a top heavyweight. He's got a top heavyweight, so he's obviously put those things behind him as well. And look, I hope this is more than a one fight deal between the two. I'd love to see Deontay Wilder fight some of the other, maybe some of the other up and coming names in a year, 18 months time, when he's whether he's had that world title opportunity or not. But yeah, I hope it is the beginning of more than just one fight with Wilder and Eddie.
Before we get to the people in the comments, Josh, stick with you quickly. What do you think of this Zhang fight? It seems like he's in tough here for a return fight after a loss against Parker.
Yeah, real tough for Zhang. I mean, you're not going to get an easy night with Wilder, and I think the mental preparation side is really difficult for facing one of the biggest, if not the biggest, puncher in the division. Possibly the two biggest punchers in the division. I mean, Zhang's got to be up there with one of the heaviest punches as well. So the thing is, what it means for both of these fighters going forward. Zhang's 40 years of age. He's taken that loss last time out. If he takes another loss, where does he go from there? Does he want to sort of slug it out on the fringe levels? Or does he have the desire to do that? And it's exactly the same for Wilder. If he takes another loss after the loss to Joseph Parker, does he want to be there and fighting at what would be considered a slightly lower level for slightly less money, probably considerably less money, it has to be said. So it could be a big moment in the careers of both these fighters, certainly a big moment in one of the careers of these fighters. And I'm not sure quite where they go next. As far as the outcome of the fight goes, haven't quite made my mind up yet on that one. I think it's going to depend a lot on Wilder. I think if it's a different Wilder to the bronze bomber we saw against in his last fight, then yeah, you'd like to think he's got the ability, he's got the power to get back on the winning trail. So for me, not one I've made my mind up yet, but you come back to me in a few weeks and I'll give you a pick.
No, I get that, and I'm very intrigued to what the people in the chat are picking for their pick for Wilder versus Zhang. And whilst I give you my thoughts on it, make sure you get your comments in. It's quite an interesting fight, and a lot depends on really as to what's left in Deontay Wilder in terms of his want and desire to get back to the top and his want to bring out the bronze bomber alter ego type of thing that we were seeing beforehand in the fights with Tyson Fury. He was very much into that fight. That fight really became personal for him, and his fights afterwards haven't really they've lacked that personal edge. They've lacked that character. I think that Wilder needs to be the full for him to bring out the best in him. I think, Wilder still has that want to, he's still got that warrior's pride to stay on his feet and not want to get knocked out by any fighter. We saw that against Parker where he was clocked with a huge shot and you could see him momentarily kind of like stiffen the lights go in his eyes kind of thing. But he saw the fight through. He didn't want to quit in the stool or anything. But the fight still wasn't there in him. Whether that might be something different where he's not got an agile type of fighter in front of him who's not really looking specifically for the KO unless it kind of presents itself. Zhang is different, and he'll apply the pressure from the off, and he'll look to finish you off or at least within 5 or 6 rounds, where then he has the script sort of flipped upon him, where his weaknesses are then magnified after the halfway point, which is where maybe Wilder comes through. But I actually kind of think if Wilder's fight is still in here, if the things outside of the ring, the taking of the ayahuasca, which I'm not one of the experts on these things, but apparently these sort of things are supposed to kind of dull your ego and your want to kind of, be that sort of bronze bomber, I guess, in his perspective. If in somewhere it's still part of him, we'll find that out in this fight. If that want to dig in, to throw, to pull the trigger is still there, it'll be found out in this fight. And it'll be there as well to find, because Zhang he's not the most agile of heavyweights. He's definitely got the boxing pedigree, or better boxing pedigree than quite a few still in the top level of the heavyweight division, as seen by how he was able to dispatch of Joyce in 2 fights in both different ways, with closing the eye with the accuracy, and then the second time around with a hellacious hook it was in the end, flattening Joe, who did incredible to get up from that. But Zhang is still there, and Zhang is still present to be hit back. I think Zhang has shown his vulnerabilities in the past as well. So that 5th, 6th, 7th round, if Wilder is still there, I'd make him the favorite at that point, and I'd make him the favorite to really put a dent in Zhang. And if he does, this is the sort of fight where you can kind of announce that Deontay Wilder is back, the Bronze Bomber is back. You muted fights like Joshua versus Zhang in the past, and you can sort of start peddling the wheels and say that Joshua didn't want to fight him. I've beaten him. I've beaten Luis Ortiz, who Joshua didn't want to fight. I'm on that comeback trail, and we can hopefully finally get the Wilder-Joshua fight that we've all wanted to see in the past, which has been a point in contention for promoters in the past as well too. So hopefully, and it's one of those things as well too, like the heavyweight division probably needs a Wilder fit and firing and back to his best. And I was quite surprised actually that it was Zhang in the opposite corner, given that he had the rematch clause against Joe Parker, so he could have exercised that. Maybe the Saudis didn't have that interest, so they thought they'd keep the momentum going, keep it going, keep the money coming in as well too, and taking the Wilder fight. I thought that maybe they might position Wilder and Joyce as the fight here, because then there's 2 fighters there who are in need of a big win, who are in need of a comeback. And you'd find out who's who, because if Wilder wins, it's going to be a knockout, and you can start pronouncing that Wilder's back. And if Joyce wins, you can start pronouncing that the Juggernaut is back. But maybe they thought in that sort of sense, just catch myself a little bit, that Joyce needed a couple of comeback wins, off of the back of that big knockout against Zhang. So that's probably why it was. But still, a slight bit of surprise that it wasn't that in the interim. Let's get to the people's thoughts in the comments on these fights. Here we go. Michael Thompson, good to see you, Michael Thompson, one of the Boxing Asylum listeners. Hrgovic has been hiding behind his amateur record. He pooped out once against Zhang, and that didn't go well. Yard could have stopped aging Kovalev, and to be fair, he wasn't that competitive as Beterbiev. Miro Gvodstick gave him his toughest fight. Has his route overinflated his worth? I think, he could have stopped Kovalev. You are right. And I do think he put a lot into that, which meant that when Canelo capitalized upon it, Kovalev was less than heading into that Canelo fight. Although Kovalev was winning the fight up until the point, Canelo was able to shut it down and shut him down emphatically. And I think him coming off the back of the Kovalev fight probably has a bit to do with that. Is Yard pricing himself out of the domestic fights he skipped? I think a lot of the domestic heavyweights, domestic light heavyweights have kind of skipped the level. A lot of them have done that, haven't they? It seemed to have been the theme for the light heavyweights to maybe not fight each other and go and jump to the highest level. When Beterbiev and Bivol fight, unless there's a rematch, unless there's controversy or whatever, I'm not too sure if there's a rematch clause, but one of the two might end up being retiring, or one of the two might end up looking at their options, or the belts might fragment and what have you, and this gives the opportunity for them to then fight at the British light heavyweights to fight for a world title. And I think that's what they've all kind of been waiting for. So maybe a belt being there might finally get that line or queue of fights that we wanted to see to actually materialize and get going. Mask is too gimmicky. Wilder wearing a mask is not the hardest to get to guess who it is. It is a little bit gimmicky. Sometimes boxing maybe needs a little bit of that plug-in from WWE and that in the past, as they have done before. I didn't mind it too much, but like has been mentioned here by Josh, once you kind of already know who's who. It gets rid of the element of surprise. DB 1, Ayman rhyming Shelley Winkle like it's a GCSE English literature paper. Foundation level, of course. Good one, DB Cooper. Well, that was top marks for that one. Wilder as the captain is odd when it should be Richards. Hearn only did it to massage Wilder's ego and show face so they can build a longer relationship. I think there's a good point in there. Whether it is, whether it isn't, this is Wilder from the PBC, isn't it? Is he still with the PBC? Is that still up in the air? Is this just one fight where they can let him go for now because Turki Al-Sheikh really wanted to bring him in, and then he goes back to the PBCs? The PBCs, people seem to be leaving the PBC right now because there is no route for them at the moment because of this new deal, and they're really picking up the assets they want right now. And if so, it surprises me that someone like Wilder might be let go because of the potential of fights that are available. So if Hearn can capitalize upon that, there are some big fights to be made, and there are some big fights, let's be honest, to be avoided from as well too. So it's still up in the air as to what route Wilder goes off of the back of this one fight. Big Chunga's Ayman is looking great. Thank you very much. Wilder vs. Zhang, in my opinion, is about whoever lands or hurts the other one first. Great fighters both historically start well. Calm down, fella. Next, you'll be telling me Conor Benn is a massive UK star. Easy on the white lies. Danny Gilfillan, evening chaps, evening Danny Gilfillan. Said Danny Gilfillan. That's a good little name. The villain Gilfillan, always tuning in. Appreciate you tuning in, Danny. You still want some Danny Sun any place, anytime. Proper fighting men like Tommy Fury. Got a good little rivalry there between the two. I'm on the cobbles. Undefeated on the cobbles. Is that a Cole Frotch line, I think, maybe? Can't quite remember if it is or if it isn't. We've got to move through the topics as well, too, pretty quickly as we're coming up to nearly the end of the show. And a bit of a, well, it's an intriguing one here, Josh, because I've kind of got my opinions on this as well, watching this and maybe not wanting to watch some of this too. And that is Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia happening over in the US of A. Ryan Garcia's behavior has been very much a point of discussion. Ryan Garcia's behavior has been something that's divided opinion as to whether he's putting something on or whether he's really in need of help. Have you managed to keep track of Ryan Garcia's ups and downs, and where do you land on what he needs, basically?
I've kept track of as much of it as I can, Ayman. It's been sort of an hourly updated thing. If you keep an eye on his social media and his Instagram, he's constantly going live on social media, and there's new bits and pieces rolling through. So I think I've managed to catch the majority of it, but it's been a real strange build-up to this fight, hasn't it? Certainly one of the strangest build-ups I can remember to a top-level boxing match. And yeah, just seeing all of that just confuses me, to be honest. Has he got the full? Is his mind fully on this fight where he goes in as a big underdog? It's obviously a huge opportunity for him. I can't think of any or many more fighters that have took this sort of approach going into one of the biggest fight of their careers. So yeah, I'm not sure which side I land on as to whether it's more acting or whether it's to do with a sort of a distraction technique, I guess you could call it. I'm not sure which side I land on, but I know Danny was speaking to Eddie Hearn yesterday, and he brought up the point that all of this can be happening, but Ryan Garcia still goes in there as a very capable fighter, a fighter with good reflexes, a fighter that carries good speed and good power, and that's not going to be taken away come fight night. Whether this is going on, whether this is real or not real, Ryan Garcia is a world-level fighter, and he's proven that over the years, and he's going to go in there on Saturday night, and he's still going to have all of those attributes. But for me, just the distraction of what's been going on, whether it is real or it isn't real, I don't think it's something we want to be seeing time and time again in boxing, to be honest.
No, I agree with you, and this is where I kind of stand on it, because if Ryan Garcia is putting on a front or an act, or this is a distraction technique, he's got millions and millions of followers. He's got millions of people that tune in to watch him. He's got influence. He's a proper influencer. And in an age of influencers, when, you know, someone can have 1,000 followers or whatever on whatever app, you can be deemed an influencer or whatever. Ryan Garcia is a true influencer. And if you're pulling it on, and if it comes to pass that he says he was trying to use this to get into his head and make Devin Haney, you know, fall off or, you know, think less of him to surprise him or get an advantage or an edge over him. We're in dangerous territory, really, because you're saying to your followers, you're saying to your people that it's acceptable to take on or use or manipulate the guise of mental health problems or mental health need or addiction or issues or, you know, serious kind of problems, and use that to get an edge, use that to embellish it to a degree, to get people to watch you, to get people to discuss you, to get people to think about you in a certain way that isn't the truth or isn't factual. And those people then follow on and then start doing that as well. The people that follow him will take that on board, and in their walk of life or whatever it is, or in the future down the line when they're in some sort of competition or whatever it is in their daily walk of life, they'll maybe think it's acceptable to do the same, which I don't think it is. Which I think for me is the wrong way to promote fights, because you get the conversation afterwards like, oh, you watching Ryan Garcia, what is he doing? You gotta come in, you gotta watch this, you gotta see if he's, you know, unhinged or whatever. That doesn't sit comfortably, really, because that's not the way you promote. That's not the way you sell a fight. And that seems to be, if it's the case that he's embellishing or is not in need of the help, that kind of seems like what is being done, unless I'm reading the room wrong. The other side of the coin is, if he is needing help, if there is a problem here, if there is reason for us to be worried about him, which it seems to be there is, because it seems to be he's appearing drunk, he's appearing erratic, he's appearing, you know, manic. He shouldn't be fighting. He shouldn't be fighting this weekend. It's a high-level fight. The topic of discussion which he's talking about on these Twitter spaces are serious matters, which is why originally I thought it might have been just a joke and it might have been a bit of a bit, as they call it in America. But when you go past that point of the topic of discussion, when you're talking about in deep-level conspiracies and things, you've gone past the point of thinking like this is a joke. This is someone who, you know, generally we need to think about whether he needs that help or not. So he probably shouldn't be fighting. Have those evaluations happen, have those conversations happen. Are those things happening to make sure that Ryan Garcia is in a fit frame of mind to fight this weekend? And that's kind of the real problem I have with this fight, and the consequences of it if this is the way promotion is going to be going forward. The other thing as well, though, is if there is maybe some, you know, form of background issues and things as well, and if he does fight and he ends up winning as well too, although I don't think it should happen, it's a crazy achievement as well. Maybe one of the biggest subversions of I don't know, thinking when it comes to a fighter who has that much on his plate and then able to draw out a win there. It's very, very crazy, kind of up in the air situation here for me, the way I think of it. And I'm not too. It's a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, at least from the way I conclude of looking at it as to this fight going ahead. But I guess that's the way of boxing these days at the moment. Let's get into some of the thoughts of the people in the chat. If I'm going to get blasted for my thoughts here, or if people maybe agree with me here, let's get into it. So DB1 with Danny Gaffilin going back and forth. Just not a good looking guy when I see one. We need a bit of a comedy break. Good looking me, I don't know about that. 2 sugars, Josh, please. He's giving you the Frank Smith treatment. Don't take that from Danny Gilfillan, Josh. To be fair, I've sparred Danny Gilfillan before, so you'd comfortably handle him, Josh. Don't you worry. DB1, Ryan Garcia stuff is wild in all capitals. Sometimes I think it's calmed down till I go on his Twitter and he's even more unhinged. It's just normal. None of it goes viral anymore. Boy needs help. Captain Casual, Ames, the real question is, where is Ryan Garcia's white horse? I must have missed this one. I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but I have not seen that with Ryan. I've seen a couple of Twitter spaces that I've been on and listened to. I had my friend Donna Corby have a conversation with him, and Donna did well with kind of drawing stuff out of him without kind of, letting it be known that he was trying to get a bit more of information about Ryan as to where his mind was, basically. So I've seen a couple of those Twitter spaces. I've seen a couple of clips of an interview with some lady called Bobby Altoff, who's all the rage now in the US, and that was concerning as well too. So yeah, it's very much one that's a situation which is concerning for me. Joe Abel, PBC have lost both Wilder and Boots. Are they going through problems? Well, they're certainly going through a reshuffle when it comes to losing TV deals. Now over with Amazon, I think it is, and they've had their first show, which by all accounts was believed to be a good show. Had a good card with Rowley on there against Isaac Cruz and Zoo and Fandora. Good little upset as well too, and for a lot of people wanted to see Rolly Romero as well too. They got that, so good value there to be had on that card. Moving forward, there's no way he's putting it on, says Danny Gilfillan. Kid is a drunk. De La Hoya and James wheeling him out to get badly hurt so they get their cut. That's the brutal part of the sport, which is, again, one of the concerning points because, if you look at it from that chain, do they want to evaluate him? Well, then the commission lose the cut and this, that, and the other. Everyone kind of loses the wedge in the wallet at the end of the fight week. So that's part of the big problem of it. It's very much a concern here. PBC had never had Boots. His promoter died and he won alone. Oh, that's right. Correct. Only Top Rank and Matchroom were interested in him, according to Dan Raphael. PBC bailed out early. Kind of just distasteful for promoters to carry on like nothing's wrong. If Ryan was in any other professional sport, he wouldn't be allowed to compete currently. Never mind it being in a combat sport. Now, again, as well, just to add to another tidbit that's come in the back of my mind, this was a guy as well, and I know that people have sort of in the past, kind of said Ryan Garcia, maybe there has been a bit of how's the best way to phrase it? Maybe don't think that Ryan Garcia's path to his success is the most natural way, and had thoughts as to whether he was using performance-enhancing drugs. Nothing has ever come out to say that point, but people thought that the long break that he had for mental health reasons was maybe masking some of that. Now, I've got to take that on face value, and I take that on face value that Ryan Garcia did have mental health issues and wanted that mental health break there in that period in his life. But that's the point here, is if you carry that over, you then understand that with this situation and this erratic behavior, this is someone that's taken a mental health break in the past and maybe is in need of another one right now, as opposed to having a scheduled bout this weekend. It's a slippery slope with Garcia. Hearn said as a promoter, you can't legally pull fighters out of fights easily. If New York Commission clears him, who are we to deny him a payday? I agree, but maybe this is the point where, in this day and age as well, too, where this topic is more under the microscope and gets the spotlight it deserves. Maybe there needs to be an accounting for that in some sort of evaluation. I did see something loosely. I can't remember fully what it was saying, that Ryan Garcia maybe was going through another evaluation soon or something along those lines. But are those being conducted? Are those accounted for? What level are they accounted to? What level of tests are being done to make sure that this fighter is capable of competing and is in sound mind to compete at the weekend? Because this is a sport where you're not. I remember it's been said and bounded about. It's not tennis what we're playing this weekend. It's trading leather. But to be fair, we've seen promoters continue to promote fights knowing one of the fighters has failed 2 tests, and even worse, seen promoters, happy for their fighters to fight with opponent failing tests. So you're right. This is one of the dark side of things where we've seen things like this go on, but that doesn't mean that this just have to go on. Surely there's a line somewhere. Are we pushing the line, or pushing the line further below and low and low? That's the question here. You have to park that discussion for now, as we have got one final topic to discuss, and that is Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez has been talking about future fights, further fights for him in the future. And it seems to be that right now, a David Benavidez, and still, I should say, a David Benavidez fight doesn't factor in his mind. Josh, I'll let you take the lead on this one. What are you thinking about this David Benavidez Canelo fight? Do you think we'll ever see it, given Canelo's thoughts and feelings on it?
I think for all the fights for Canelo out there, I think the most anticipated one is probably the David Benavidez fight. You could possibly put out there a rematch with Dimitri Bivol, but yeah, whether we'll see it or not, I'm not too sure. I mean, he seems pretty against it at the moment, quoted as saying he would need $100 million to face Benavidez. I'm not sure where we're going to be able to find that amount of money if we want to see that fight. But I think from the argument from the Canelo side of things is the fighters that he's fought in the past. He's fought a lot of fighters that at the time weren't particularly fancied. There was not necessarily a reason to fight them. Very much part of the Who Wants Them club, and he's taken a number of those at different points in his career. I think Bivol, was certainly one of those fighters. He was struggling to find a big fight, and Canelo stepped up the weights once again to take that fight. So, in terms of ducking those sort of opportunities, I don't think you can accuse Canelo of doing that in his career's entirety. But as far as the Benavidez fight goes, it's one that we'd really like to see, and one that I'm not sure we will see, to be honest. Whether Benavidez has to go up another weight to find those big opportunities, maybe that will be the case. But I'm sure they'll have one more crack at trying to make that fight once the Munguia fight is out of the way, assuming Canelo does get the job against Munguia, and it's certainly not a formality, that one. It's the fight that would be the logical fight to make after that, but not necessarily the fight that I think will be made.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's Canelo seems to be on the surface not really interested in the Benavidez fight for whatever reason. Now, Canelo has made this point in the past that he feels like some of these fighters are in like the Floyd Mayweather sweepstakes of the past, and they were kind of holding and waiting for the opportunity because Canelo needed an opponent as opposed to earning their opportunity. But then David Benavidez, I think, saw those comments, and then they matched him up with Caleb Plant. He beat Caleb Plant. Andrade, I've never really been sold on Andrade, but Andrade was someone who was looking for that fight. He then beat Demetrius Andrade. I think off of the back of those two performances, when you look at what's out there, he might be the most deserving of an opportunity against Canelo Alvarez right now. And the other side of it as well, too, is Canelo, when it comes to these fights, I think it's been mentioned about the shots that he calls and what he might insert into contracts and such, and hydration clauses as to, secure his end of it being the A side. Should he do these things? Should he be able to? Should he be allowed to? That's gone out through the sport from past, and A sides have been able to call those shots and B sides have had to take it. But what it does do is when it comes to the discussions about it, when it gets out to the media, when it gets out to the public, it sort of diminishes your achievements because you've put those in place and you've not maybe fought the full fighter. And sure, they're maybe getting an advantage by being, slimming down to weights where they don't really belong anymore. They have to take the consequence of maybe, being dead at the weight, but they'll play with that as long as they can do. For someone like Canelo, you kind of get your achievements you get your achievements diminished because of those clauses that you put in. So I think this just comes down to Canelo wanting to dictate his own career here, as he has done so in the past, being the face in the sport, one of the faces in the sport, off of the back of his record in the recent years. Like, he broke my heart by fighting GGG, and although I maintain that Triple G won the two fights against Canelo, the first two, he definitely beat him the third time round at super middle, but he did maybe wait him out. But that, like, the fight against Munguia is a really good fight. That's a fight that people have wanted for quite a long time as well. So, and we're finally getting that fight. I think that will be, for all intents and purposes, for as long as it lasts, a very exciting fight. So you can't deny Canelo. I think a lot of it has to do because it was set up for the first fight with Jamal Charlo. It ended up being Jamel. Jamel didn't put up a good performance, so no appetite was for Jamal. And now people are wanting to see the fights that they want. People are now getting, or seeing fights now, what's happening in Saudi Arabia, and thinking, now it's your turn to do that. Canelo's like, hang on, I'll dance to my own tune. And therefore, he's not quite ready to take on David Benavidez and might wait him out a little bit longer. We're running out of time here now, so we'll just wrap up in the comments to you guys. I'll come back one more time and leave Josh with the final word. As he thinks of what his final words are, we'll come to you in the chat. And we have here DB Cooper 1 saying, Golden Boy are awful at promotion. The ticket prices are silly and the stadium is half empty because fans didn't know Garcia would show up and they're waiting for cheap last-minute tickets. That seems to be the lay of the land in America, aren't they? That a lot of the gate comes up on it's a walk-up gate, isn't it? On the day they kind of come up and grab the tickets and then wait for those, like you said, cheap last-minute ones as opposed to paying up front. But yeah, that's a problem with a lot of fights these days, stadiums or arenas or whatever being, very much not populated for the fights, especially early. People tend to come in and get out once their fighters, or at least the person they bought the tickets off have fought. So, yeah, that's a big problem around in the UK as well too. Danny Gafflin says, Ayman accusing someone of ducking pot kettle black. Ducking, I'm just bobbing and weaving, not ducking. Joey Abel, Benavidez has fought one, maybe two world level fighters his whole career. Can see Canelo's point in not wanting to reward someone who's treaded water whilst Canelo was building his legacy. Get that point completely, Joey Abel. Canelo, you either die a hero or you live long enough to become the villain. Which one will he end up being? Issue with Canelo is he can make $50 million fighting random folks because of his casual Latino following, despite all promoters losing money on his shows. No incentive for David, sadly. Canelo has earned the right to fight who he wants. However, no one has the right to hold a division hostage. Benavidez is by far the most worthy challenger at 168. Drop the belts. Big Chungers, bye, and take care, mate. Have a great weekend. And Josh, Omar Smith says the R. The E, the R, the A. I can't think of the rap song that reminds me of, but the R, whatever that means. Thank you for coming in, Omar, at 1 minute to 5 p.m. We're closing off. It's been a pleasure having you guys join us this weekend. Good to see you guys in here. Good to see the regulars and irregulars, some of you in the chat. Speaking of irregulars, I'm going to bow out by saying bye, but as is customary, I'll leave the final word to Josh Green, who's in the seat. If you haven't already, though, make sure you click the like button and subscribe. Much more boxing content coming your way. We'll be back again next week. I've sat down with Ricky Hatton as well, too, to go through his Hall of Fame induction and other questions within the sport as well, too, to discuss with the great Ricky Hatton. So be sure to be tuned into that coming very soon, probably this weekend. I know my days are all messed up, DB Cooper 1, as I do this intro and mess it up as well, too, but as mentioned, as is customary, I'll leave it to Josh for the final words.
Yeah, you mentioned that Hassan interview we've got coming up with yourself. Loads more content still to come from the 5v5 Media Day. Over 25 interviews from me, yourself, and Danny over the last couple of days. So lots of stuff to look out for there. Haney Garcia fight week as well. Really exciting times on the channel. And you've only got to wait 5 more days for the next SO Live. So we'll see you then.